Hello, everyone. I'm here with Matthew Noble. Hello, Matthew.
Hello.
Matthew is a Celta tutor, and he's based in Tacoma, which is south of Seattle. Yeah,
That's right.
in the U.S. Okay, thank you so much, Matthew, for uh, being here. And we've met at Twitter, and Matthew is a very active teacher on Twitter. What's your Twitter name there, Matthew?
It's T-Sol Matthew.
T-Sol Matthew. I'll leave it.
Yeah.
I'll leave the link on the
Okay.
description. Okay. Thank you so much, Matthew.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get started. Can you tell me how you got into ELT, Matthew? Because from what I read, it was not your. Was it incidentally or?
Well, I mean, I don't know where the line is between, full agency and
Uh-huh.
some speck of randomness. But I think, I mean, I'm probably one of I would say I'm not atypical of the native speaker type who often sort of falls into teaching or feels like they've fallen into teaching
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't have a straight path. I basically I wanted to move to the oldest Buddhist country with a Buddhist history that was contiguous and alive, and that was Sri Lanka. And so the reason I went to Sri Lanka was to follow up on a teaching volunteer opportunity at a monastery, so I could learn from the monks and get to know that culture. And I wanted to interview specific monks that I'd read about. So I ended up, being there and loving the teaching more than studying the history and thinking about an academic path in that direction.
Uh-huh. And when was that? When was this?
2004.
2004. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I just graduated from college not so long before that. I was 24 though, so 'cause I didn't go straight through college. I took breaks and worked and did different things. So I was a recent college graduate, but I was a little bit older than usual.
Uh-huh. And how long did you stay in Sri Lanka?
About a year.
About a year.
And after I taught for about 6 months, the tsunami hit. So the second half of my time there it was December 26th, the day after Christmas was Boxing Day, 2004, and the big tsunami in Sri Lanka got it really bad. And I was really close to being in the worst possible part of the
Wow.
island. And that morning I was in a better place. So I spent the second half of my time there working in refugee camps and doing stuff like that, doing a little bit of teaching while I was there as well with some children. But,
Quite an experience. Huh?
yeah, it was. Yeah.
And okay, so if you could take one teaching aid or material or resource, whatever, to a desert island, what would you take? Would you take your laptop?
Probably should take my
Yeah.
laptop, but I'm gonna answer a little whiteboard. It's just
Right.
a boring, flat thing, but
Uh-huh.
it's so obviously a laptop can be a whiteboard and a whiteboard can't be a laptop. But
Yeah.
uh, I love thinking about and using whiteboards these days, and the ELT whiteboard
I know the
uh,
hashtag. Yeah.
hashtag
Uh-huh.
Twitter is getting me really thinking about it a lot.
Yeah.
So that's what and maybe I could float on it if I needed to get away from the island. I don't know.
Great. Great. You said in your blog that going back to the opportunity to teach English to Buddhist monks in Sri Lanka, yeah, at a monastery school. And how did that happen? How did you find this opportunity? Can you tell us more about that experience in particular?
So that one, so as I mentioned, it was sort of my first jumping into
Uh-huh.
teaching abroad. I taught some summer camps and things like that in New York. But how did it happen? I basically just Googled sort of a bunch of volunteer organizations or places to go. I think it was,
Mhm.
I was thinking even about woofing, like willing workers on organic farms or here or there,
Mhm.
to get myself to different places. I ended up with a volunteer organization who were pretty good, but I think, like a lot of these things, had certain, I mean, ups and downs and
Mhm.
support and lack of support, and I ended up actually realizing that I probably could have done better myself in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
But it's one of those things that for a lot of college grads or gap year people, I mean, there's a huge industry, a sub industry of the whole ELT
Mhm.
world that's, sort of internships and this and that. It's the kind of thing that if you do stick around for a little bit longer, you realize, okay, that got me through the door, and now I'm here, and there's so much more I could do. And you look back and you realize, you know, I needed to do that at the time, but it was good. I stayed with a family, so I had a great sort of cultural immersion experience. I learned lots of the local language, which was really helpful, especially after the tsunami. So I could
Mhm.
actually communicate in different situations. Uh, and the placement turned out to be exactly what I wanted. It was literally an ancient
Really.
monastery, one of the oldest monasteries in Sri Lanka, and it was also a complex of Buddhist monasteries and, and Hindu
Mhm.
shrines, and it's an unbelievable place to be for someone interested in that stuff.
Were there other teachers there as well?
I was the only one. Then there was one more American guy showed up. Um, so that being the case, I also got a lot of inquiries and a lot of interest from. So it didn't take me a week to get another job or another tutoring and some children on my like
Mhm.
on the my monastery from my house.
Mhm.
I met families who called me in and said, offered me tea and breakfast and said, can you
Uh-huh.
sit with, sit with my young son for 20 minutes on your way to work every other day. And so I'd end up just being, the village teacher essentially,
Oh, really?
the foreign teacher anyway.
Uh-huh.
So there wasn't a lot. Sri Lanka doesn't have lots of foreign teachers anyway
Mhm.
around
Mhm.
the island.
Right. And
Yeah.
going back to your talking about your blog, yeah.
Okay.
Your I think I'm not sure if it's the latest blog post you wrote, but there is one that grabbed my attention, and I'm gonna quote the sentence here. Um you said that, and of course, the more conscious the fluidity of your identity as a teacher and the conditionality of it, the more able you are to try to set conditions that favor growth, even when they sometimes cause pain. This quote remind me of my, I don't know if you watched my last interviewee with Marcela Sintra, and she mentioned that learning is painful,
Mm.
which I think it was an interesting thing to say.
Uh-huh.
And how have you experienced that? And did you fear or do you fear anything in your path to learning?
Oh, that's such a deep question.
It
uh,
is.
I mean, I think the idea that I was trying to express was that, um, I mean, so thinking back to so after Sri Lanka, I had about 7 years, 6.5 years in Thailand. And
Mhm.
during that time, the first thing I did when I moved to Thailand was go sleep in a hammock on a beach for about a month or two because I was exhausted from all the volunteer work in Sri Lanka. But when I woke up from my slumber, I saw that there was a Celta course in Bangkok, and I jumped
Mhm.
on it because I knew I needed to get trained. I knew I didn't know what I was doing at all. Um, and from the point where I graduated with my Celta to the point where I decided to come back to the States and do a master's degree, all that teaching experience in Thailand, lots of different contexts and lots of different places and lots of work. Um, I think the number one thing that was in front of me in my mind was I need to go headlong into like teaching experiences, like
Mm-hmm.
classroom face to face. Like I can't read about it. I can't do anything but put myself in situations where I have to deal with facilitating learning
Mm-hmm.
in. Um, and I mean, I did read about it, and I did try to get trained up, but I recognized that there wasn't any way around. Like, the and it was painful in a way because I would fail a lot or not feel good about my classes or
Mm.
students asking me questions and really exposing me as someone who needed to keep learning myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know if painful is the adjective that I would really peg on learning in a sense because it's satisfying, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a um, as far as teacher learning goes in my personal experience, um, when I think of that setting conditions for growth or learning, it's really taking risks. And for example, I was constantly asking people to observe my lessons,
Mm-hmm.
which always like a nerve-wracking thing to do. And no matter, even if it was just instigated by me, I still felt like someone was coming into my space and was going to judge me. But
Mm-hmm.
I really felt like it needed to happen, and I needed to like have almost like an intervention of someone telling me that what that could do better. And it was kind of always a blow to the ego in a way that's kind of unavoidable. But recognizing that, you say, okay, this is going to be one part of me is going to not like this, but another part of me who sees my future self as a better teacher sees that that's the thing that must happen. And because I recognized that there was no other way around it for
Mm-hmm.
me, that I did a lot of that and tried a lot of things like that. Um, so kind of I mean, not to go all the way to sort of just being a bull in a china shop and just going straight ahead without being informed or trying to set the conditions for success. You have to recognize that as teachers, we can never just have a straight line into, an
Absolutely.
expert
Yeah.
ability. It's
Absolutely.
impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,